Hi there, and welcome to the Skylight Books author reading series. If you'd like to learn more about us and our many upcoming author events, please visit skylightbooks.com, where you can browse our inventory, buy books, and join our Friends with Benefits Club. You can also follow us on Twitter, Tumblr, and Facebook. To speak to a real live bookseller like me, please call 323-660-1175. Thanks for your support, and enjoy.
Can we tell what the book's about? Can we tell the whole story?
Absolutely.
I mean, it's about AJ's girlfriend who dies of cancer, and I too am a widower, and so it just connected with me so much, and I think that was the point of our mutual friend passing the book along. This is going to connect with you, and it so profoundly did. And I guess a place to start is, at what point did you know that this was something you wanted to make a book, make work about?
Pretty early on. I mean, in our relationship, Kristen would tease me. She would just be like, I was introducing her to comics and graphic novels, and I was at art school at the time, and I remember her just saying, she'd jokingly nudge me and just be like, "Oh, you should write one of these about me one day," like you should. She thought our story was so remarkable, and thought that it should be, she kind of incepted me to do it, So, maybe, early on in our relationship, she was already encouraging me to write about her and us. Not like, she just kept like bugging me about, but she was like, she thought it was special enough to put pen to paper and capture.
How did the writing go? When I say I want to say the writing because I'm a writer, but obviously the visual element is a huge one. But how did the process of doing the drawings and
the writing was the hard part, I think. Well, it's something that I don't think I've been trained to do. I actually had a lot of help with editing from friends and things, but I say it was difficult, but at the same time, she passed away maybe 2 months before I started the book, so a lot of stuff was still fresh, and it kind of just like poured out of me, and I was kind of just, my hand was just trying to keep up with like my brain, but it was that, I think the aspect of it that was really difficult as well was condensing, or trying to do justice to both her story, her life story, and then also the story of some aspect of surfing, surf history. And that was just a lot of reading, a lot of like sifting through and like trying to find different sources that, I thought were reputable or like trustworthy or had the right story. Because, in surf history, so much is debated. Like even the origins of it, it's seen as like a Polynesian thing, but then some people are like, it's a Peruvian thing because they're riding these reed boats after they went fishing in like 500 BC or whatever. So that was hard, just condensing all these different things. The easy thing was drawing it, actually, because that's what I know, and it's what I went to school for, and it's what I'm most comfortable doing. So that was just like executing.
Was it an emotional process, or did you sort of click into a more technical craft sort of?
Bit of both. I think on the front end it was very much emotional. It's weird talking to you guys like about it, because I was like working on it in silence for so long, and like it was kind of just my thoughts, but it was very much still fresh, and I was the wounds of grief were like closing, and I was trying to reopen them to try and capture what I was feeling at the time, and it was very difficult. It's very difficult.
Something you did that I really like is it weaves a historical story, Duka Hanamoku and Tom Blake, who are very important in the surfing world. In surfing history, they're both huge figures. And then there's the I'll call it present day, even though it's not present day literally, but the more contemporary story, and that is the story of you and your girlfriend. but you use sepia tone to tell the backs. It's almost a key, and it's a really interesting device to sort of let you know where you're at. But sepia tone in the back in the historical piece, and then blue for the present. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. It's pretty. I mean, there's not a lot of deep thought into doing that. I think it was just a way to, one, introduce color in the story, but also you kind of nailed it. Like, you're placing someone in the story, and like there's a lot of moving parts. So I just figured, like, let's color code it. Like, it'll be easier for you to place yourself in the narrative if you can kind of address the color scheme. But I guess in terms of the color and the meaning, people are always wondering like what the deeper significance of it, and like sepia is kind of an obvious choice. It's like reminiscent of old fraying film, and like it's a color that we all, we watch an old movie and it's right there. And so that was the thinking behind that. And then the blue is just, I was really sad at the time. And it was kind of like it's kind of a cliche, but I was feeling that way, so I used that color. And also it's somewhat of a complementary, if we're going to get technical, it's like a dusty orange, and then like it's like a greenish blue, so it's a bit of complementary colors, but also just very basic reasons for using those colors.
Did you listen to music while you worked?
All the time. I mean, it was funny because it was like I was working at Skechers as a colorist, and I at the end of the day, like, the way my brain knew that it was time to switch from like work to like my real work was I'd turn like my little lamp on at my desk, and then I'd put some Bill Evans on, and then just as soon as like it was like the same. I think it might have been maybe it's Bill Evans, Chet Baker, Bill Evans. It's just some self-titled album on YouTube, and like it was like almost a signal as soon as I heard the first couple of notes, and I'm like, okay, it's work time.
Oh, that's really great.
And it switched my brain.
And was it instrumental music always that you listened to while you work?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially writing. I'm sure it's the same for you.
Yeah, for sure. It's sort of lyrics are fighting with the words.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It's just too much going on.
Yeah. And talk to me about Duka Hanamoku and Tom Blake. Can you maybe just tell a little bit about who they are, and then why you chose them as this foil, I guess you might call it?
Sure. So Duka Hanamoku is a surfing pioneer, and he was probably, he's known as the greatest waterman of all time, and he has a very solid place in surf history. And when I was researching the surfing aspect of this book, it was a prompt given to me by my publisher. They're like, try and combine these two stories, because you obviously have a connection to surfing on an emotional level, and then there's the historical aspect that they wanted in some sort of book form. And I was like, that's crazy. Why would I do that? And then, and I was like gonna not do the book, and then I realized like, I should do the book. And then what happened was, like, in my research, I was just looking for something that I could somehow find threads to kind of weave our stories together. And Duke's relationship to Tom was very interesting because they shared a reverence and respect for each other, and it was like this budding friendship that like resulted in amazing things happening for at least one of them. And I saw that mirroring my relationship with Kristen. She was kind of setting up my life to succeed in all these different ways that I didn't know that she had planned out for me. And when I found that thread, I'm like, okay, this might work. And so Tom he's not like an insider surfer person. He's from the East Coast. He was just, a swimmer, but he was like nomadic, and he decided to go on this journey to find himself. And and along the way he found surfing, and he found a home on the Hawaiian Islands, and he invented all these things that have become staples in surf technology today. And not even just surfing, he did stuff for lifeguards, and yeah, I think he said like his greatest accomplishment was like all the lives he saved with his lifeguard buoy. The things you guys see lifeguards with, they still use it to this day, and it was Tom who made that.
Interesting. And what is your relationship like with surfing today?
I think it's always connected to Kristen still, because like whenever I'm out there and I'm stretching or like putting my gear on and stuff, and I'm in the sand, I kind of like have a little conversation with her before I start surfing, and the places I surf, there's like strong residual memories in these areas, and I just feel connected to her when I do it. But it's also not like this super spiritual thing. It's like super healthy for you, and I'll go out when I'm feeling super fat, and I'll go and paddle and feel better. And on the health side and on the emotional side, like it's all good for us. But I just love doing it. It's just something that's super fun to do, and there's always something to learn and progress. And it's like any creative form, art form.
And your book's done really well, and there have been a lot of events and interviews and things like that. What's been interesting or surprising about that? Have you? I mean, it's really an interesting thing to have lost a loved one, and then to have this book that becomes a vehicle that's creating new experiences, basically.
It's crazy. I couldn't have anticipated the kind of reaction it's been getting. I think from the second that I put pen to paper and I made the first chapter I made was the kiss. If you guys have read the book, and it's when Kristen and I share our first kiss, and it's like a prologue to the loss I would experience later. I sent that to the CEO of No Brow, and he emailed me back, and he said he had like tears in his eyes, and he was profoundly affected. And it was like a crappy sketch. It was like super rough, but to see that it resonated on that level, and then from a stranger, I didn't really know him that well, and then now it's happening all over the world, kind of, at least in the places that it's published. And No Brow's been really good about selling book rights to different publishers around Europe and stuff. So Casterman, the French publisher that made they published like Tintin and Mobius, they picked it up, and they've been just slanging books. And the people that have responded, it's been so, it's very touching, the things that people say, because I think what I'm talking about in the book is kind of universal, but I didn't realize how universal it was when I was writing it. I was just writing what I was feeling at the time, and death and grief and loss, like those are things that everyone can relate to on some level, and I think it's resonating with people. And like it's so crazy. Like I'll just keep getting. I guess the book's been published in Poland and France and Italy and China, I think. But I'll just wake up and it's just like a bunch of Polish emails, like, and they're just like I have to Google Translate everything. But it's always like I lost my mom, or I'm battling cancer, or I loved your book so much. I wanted to show it to. I've been sharing it with all the people I know, and even just yesterday there was a Swedish filmmaker that sent me the most touching message, and she's doing she was hired to do a Swedish campaign addressing, I think, breast cancer, but it's the most beautiful film, and she was like, I picked up your book at the East London Comics Festival, and I was approached by this Swedish cancer conglomerate, and wanted me to make a film for them, for this nonprofit, and she sent it to me, and it was so touching. And she was just like, the thing that you made has been resonating, and this is just one of the effects of its ripples, So it's been crazy.
Oh, that's so wonderful. It's powerful. It's so powerful. Going back to kind of your process, there's this thing, right, where we make this work, and we want the work to be out in the world, and we're like, for lack of a better word, we're ambitious with it. And yet, when you're doing something that is so close to your heart and that is stabbing yourself and kind of letting blood just flow, and Bill Evans can be incredibly sad. You alone working after hours in Skechers in Manhattan Beach.
Yeah.
And I remember you told me something which I thought was great, where you became friends with all the janitorial staff. Like, you were working the night, you were working the kind of the late shift there,
Yeah.
the last person in the building, right?
Absolutely.
So I have this wonderful image of you, which you could probably draw really well, which is like the outside of the building, and all the lights are off except for one, and there's just a silhouette of this guy working with Bill Evans playing. In that moment, and kind of tapping or kind of going into a story that is extremely sad, describe that? Like, were you just trying to get at the truth of it? Were you trying to get at were you trying to make how it felt for you resonate on the page? I guess what I'm getting at is, the interesting thing is, you do this thing that is what you do, which is make art, but it's also very painful to reopen the wounds, as you put it, which I so relate to. But then it does connect with people, and it provides a salve for people, and it connects people, and it creates a life. So in the process of the work, what are you going for?
I think a bit of all of that. I think this story, I mean, I said no to so many things for almost 3 years and isolated myself, and because the story was that important to me, because I think, it's hard to like go back and be in my mind at that time, but I remember just having this like feeling clawing at the back of my heart, like I'm forgetting her each day that passes, and if I don't get certain things down on paper, then I might lose her, and I was just fighting that feeling. I was very afraid of forgetting, so I was very driven to just try and piece together this story, because in a way I was immortalizing her, and I was trying to keep her in my mind and in her family's mind. Like it was the book is for her, and it's not. I was just kind of like, I was just trying to get her on paper, and I think part of the blame was on No Brow too, because they had this deadline, and I don't know if I would have written the book if they hadn't asked me to. So it's kind of like, there's practical reasons, like there's a publisher that's depending on me for this, but it's also bigger than that for me. But with their impetus, I was able to, like, they drew the story out of me. But yeah, I was just looking to not forget her.
And has her family read the book?
Yeah, I mean, maybe they're here. Nope, they're not here. Yeah, they have, and that's like in all the interviews I've done, that people are so curious about their reaction, and yeah, they've read it. Her mom is someone that's I say to people that, like, I don't think she fully trusted me or like thought I was good enough for Kristen until she passed away. Like, that's the kind of relationship we had, and I didn't hear from her directly, but her son told me that she read it, and she was just at work, like, kind of bawling, and she's been amazing. She's been, like, buying the book in bulk and just giving it to all these medical professionals and all her old nurses and all her oncologists and doctors and surgeons. Like, they all have copies of the book now, and her brother read it, and he's one of my closest friends, and I consider him my own brother. And when I gave him the book, I was like on pins and needles for like 2 weeks, because his opinion was kind of the closest to Kristen's, and it's the one that meant the most to me, you know. So if I had his approval, like, no one else has really mattered. But I didn't hear from him for a long time, and I was like, fuck, I don't know. I don't know what this means. Like, maybe he didn't like it, maybe because there's some stuff in there that, you know, might paint their family in a bad light or something. And I was just waiting for his approval, and then he finally got back to me, and he was like, the reason I didn't get back to you so soon is because I knew it would be hard to read. And it's just like we've been saying, it's like this ongoing theme of like reopening wounds and revisiting it. And I can't imagine how painful it would be for, you know, her only brother, her only sibling, to kind of rehash all that stuff. So he finally got back to me and he told me he loved it, but it was hard for both of us. But yeah, I mean, and she has a huge family, just a huge network of people, and they've all been championing the book, and they love it. I think
Nice.
I think one of the most touching things was saying that they have this thing to constantly remind them of who she was and how she was, and they're very appreciative.
I have a couple more questions for you, but can we throw it to anyone have a question for AJ?
And
Were there any pieces of art that you took in while you were creating, other than, of course, the music?
yeah, there's a lot. I mean, I was drawing on a lot of the things that I've been a fan of for a long time. You know, a lot of comics. Just because, like, I've never made, like, the longest comic I made before I went on this, like, crazy path writing this 300-page thing was, like, a little comic in a zine. So I was, like, constantly referencing, you know, my comics heroes, Charles Burns, Olivier Schwerin, Daniel Klaus, Adrian Tomini, Jillian Tamaki. The list goes on, but a really big inspiration visually was like Adrian Tomini's Killing and Dying. He has a story in there. I'm sure you guys have read it, but I think it's the namesake of the book, and it's like a short story in there, and it's just so powerful. There's no context really spoken about. You just kind of see this girl's mother degrading throughout the panels, and it's like all these visual cues that, you know, this is someone who's going through chemo and she's clearly dying, and it's not really addressed, and it's so understated and beautiful, and that was a huge touchstone for me when I was making this. And a book by William Finnegan called Barbarian Days was just incredible. Like, I went back and rewrote things because the way that he described, it's a book about this, it's like a memoir.
Yeah.
And he's just talking about how he went all over the globe and surfed, and like his youth is intertwined with this thing, and as he's getting into older age, he's just reminiscing on it, and I really connected with it because I haven't read a lot of surf biographies and stuff until now, and then when I read his, it was one of the first that really resonated because he was writing, it was like I was sitting out in the water with him when he was talking about how he experienced surfing, and it was just so one-to-one that, like I said, I just went back and I was like, delete all this crappy writing, and just like, you know, I was totally inspired. Good question.
I'm looking at the both of you, and the interviewer, I'm a little bit confused because you look like the surfer, the blonde-haired surfer.
I read the book and it moved me, but I've spent my life surfing pretty much, and I write about surfing quite a lot.
So your friends? Or?
We became friends. I never met him, and then I got to know him via the pages of the book. He drove me to tears. I cried 3 times in my life. It's a it's a relationship story above all else, but it's braided with 2 characters who are very important to the history of surfing. So surfing is this sort of foil, or I don't know. I'm trying to think of.
It's like a backdrop.
Yeah, it's a backdrop. Yeah, yeah.
To the relation. So the importance of the book really is in the relation, but you get the surfing out of it too.
And they spent a lot of time surfing. Yeah, together.
Yes, she was a surfer also. But
What else is important to know for the reader, or with someone coming to the book without a lot of knowledge? What would you tell them?
I would tell them to not. Whenever I'm at, I've gone to a lot of like book festivals and comics festivals, and people will pick up the book and kind of skim. And I think it's a book that you just have to read cover to cover, because it's not going to make any sense, and unless you get to the end and it's all explained, because it doesn't. They're pretty disparate subjects, like you're saying, and I had to find a way to intertwine the 2, and it doesn't make sense unless you read it all the way through. And but yeah, I mean, that's something that's been told to me, is like it's a hard book to sell, because unless you experience it, then you won't. It's hard to just explain before anyone's read it.
It was interesting for me because I mostly read prose, right? So I'm like, it's all text, and the imagination comes and fills it, and I don't read graphic novels. But it's interesting how few words are necessary with the visuals to carry you along. I mean, there's not a ton of words in the book.
Right, and that's something that's been pointed out to me quite a bit, and it was pretty intentional, because I'm very much concerned about someone's experience reading a graphic novel or a comic or whatever. Like, the best comics are just seamless. You're not just like reading it. There's parts where you can pause and like appreciate a story being told visually, and then there's parts that need, text. But I love when I read something and it's so fluid that I'm not like straining to like figure out where I am in the story and like which bubble is which and who's talking. Like, I think I appreciate being sparse. But it was like a revelation to me as I was working, because I learned that like not everything needs a caption, and there's like a whole chapter where I had all this writing, because I would start with a script. I just had like a huge Microsoft Word document with all the writing, and then I would try and plug it into these drawings, and I'd plot these storyboards essentially. But I realized like what I was drawing was saying what I was writing in some aspects, and it was even more powerful sometimes if I removed the words. Mm-hmm. So you as the reader can put together and have your own interpretation, or have, I don't need to tell you how to feel in a certain moment,
Yep.
So that was kind of a big thing I learned making comics.
Do you ever see yourself doing another graphic novel ever again, or something that's like not as personal or anything like that?
Yeah, definitely. I think enough people know enough about my personal life at this point. So I think I would love to do like an anthology of like short comics, or just kind of exploring the form and like kind of doing better drawings. Just taking my time, because again, like, this book was there's quite a strict deadline to keep up with, so a lot of, I had to like be okay with certain pages not coming out as perfect as I wanted, and it's just part of the process. and it was more important to finish the story and get it cohesive and out there than it was to be like making sure everything's perfect. But for the next thing, I think I want to try and make sure everything's perfect.
In your story of the surfing and your story intertwined with your personal relationship, the story in there on your personal relationship, because you're both athletes, you said you were surfing and she was surfing, so you shared the whole story of the discovery of the point of the beginning when you're surfing, and then you discover her situation with her health, and then it traces through the whole story.
Yeah, so our relationship started with her diagnosis as a cancer patient. She was diagnosed with osteosarcoma when she was like, how old are you when you're a sophomore in high school? However old that is. And she, so I didn't really know much about her active life because the entire time I knew her, she was suffering from cancer. And she had, a BTK amputation, below the knee amputation on her right leg, and she had, so many surgeries on her lungs, and as our relationship progressed, her health was worsening. So all these things that I knew about her active life was told to me from, third parties, her cousins, or her friends, and her brother. And it wasn't until maybe 2 years before she passed where she started surfing again, and then that's kind of like where the story picks up in the book. And then I explore through interviews with her family how she came to be so involved in the sport. Thanks for asking. I'm a pretty open book when it comes to certain things, but I agree with you. I think if I had more time and I had more freedom in terms of deadline stuff, I mean, I would have loved to expound upon so many aspects, because to cover a point in history of surfing and try and cover someone's entire life, it's a lot to cram into a book. And there are things that I wish I could have told more, because I kind of breezed through certain aspects of things that were not as tidied and cleaned up as it looks in the book. Her illness, her sickness, all that stuff was way more gritty, way more intense, and it deserved more life on the page for sure. But in terms of trying to appease a publisher, got to get things done on time.
Anything else you want to talk about?
I just want to thank you guys for coming. This is awesome. Thank you, Jamie.
Yeah, thank you. And you'll be signing books, maybe right here.
Yeah, and please eat the pastries. There's a lot.
Thanks so much for coming.
Thanks, Jamie.
You've been listening to the Skylight Books author reading series. Don't forget, you can listen to this and all of our other great podcasts at skylightbooks.com. Thanks again for stopping by, and we hope to see you soon.